Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by River, the place that I personally go to securely invest in Bitcoin with confidence and with zero fees.
They want people to vote for them, then we tell them that Bitcoin's good for them. Bitcoin's good for their people. Bitcoin's good for society. Bitcoin fixes a lot of issues. It doesn't just fix money, but it fixes energy. It fixes politics. It fixes so many parts of our lives. We need to sell this to them.
It's great to connect with you. I know we've talked a little bit in passing here and there, and this is wonderful to be able to sit down with you and have a good, thorough conversation, sir.
Yeah, likewise. I keep on bumping you in these amazing conferences, but we never have enough time to sit down and have a good chat. And we have little talks, good talks, power talks, but then we're busy. We got to get back to our duties.
We're getting torn in different directions.
Exactly.
I think for anybody that would look at you and see all of, I couldn't even imagine the time constraints and directions you're being pulled in a given day. And I think for somebody that would look at a person like yourself and say, there's so many things that you could be looking at or focusing upon, and here you are talking about Bitcoin and are very passionate about Bitcoin. How in the world did that come on your radar when there's so many other things that could be distracting or pulling you in a different direction?
That's a lovely way of putting that question. How did I get into Bitcoin? Yeah, it was first started. I mean, the story goes that I first heard about Bitcoin in 2011 when I believe the first time I heard about it was when they pulled it off from when Visa MasterCard was pulled off the donation page for WikiLeaks, and Julian Assange said that we accept Bitcoin. And I looked at it and I was like, well, that's funny. That's interesting. But I brushed it off as magic internet money. And speaking to some other people, they were like, oh, yeah, is it going to go to 100 or whatever? I just didn't take any notice of it at all. It's just that, something that you find online, one of those funny things online. Then years went by, sadly. And 2017 came along, and I was on Reddit. I know Reddit, yeah, but I was on Reddit, scrolling through the homepage of Reddit, and then every now and then the Bitcoin subreddit would pop up, and that little meme of the roller coaster guy with his hands up in the air would be going up all the time, going wee. I was like, what's going on there? I saw this a few times over a few weeks in like early 2017, and then I get a call from my best friend. This is when I was living in London, by the way, in 2017. And my friend is like, "Hey, Philip, have you heard of Bitcoin?" I was like, "Yeah." Well, what's up? But it's something that you should get into. You should buy some. It's like a great investment. It's a great inflation hedge. There's only going to be 21 million ever invested. I was like, "Oh, produced. That's interesting." Didn't really take much notice of that, but he was really into it and passionate about. Had some passion. He's my best friend, and I kind of take his advice. So I was like, okay, show me how. So he got me onto Coinbase. I bought some Bitcoin, and he got me a wallet. I stored it on my wallet, and then I saw some other things on Coinbase. I saw Ethereum and Litecoin. I was like, what are those? Oh, they have it. There are other cryptos or whatever. They have a chance too. I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Can I buy it? Should I buy them? Yeah, why not? And then that year was full of myself and him. Yeah, we got some other friends into it as well. We got into the ICO craze and stuff. So basically, I joined for greed purposes. I was working in traditional finance at the time, and I thought I kind of knew how things work, how the financial system works and stuff. But when Bitcoin came about, that's kind of novel, something novel. I had no idea what it was going to turn out to be. But obviously got distracted by the other things that were on offer, by all those other ICOs and other cryptos that were being shoved down your throat if you were in that crypto space in 2017 and you weren't really well read in Bitcoin. I was easily distracted. We were easily distracted, so we threw our money at this and that project, but nothing ever stuck, obviously. Then it all crashed, and 2018, 19 came about, and I was like still into Bitcoin, but not really passionately. I was still stacking here and there. When I got a good paycheck or when I got like a bonus, I would put some Bitcoin and stuff and just mind my own business and stuff. Then I think it was 2020 when the whole COVID thing happened. That's when I started to pay attention. my job went online. We all worked from our homes. We all were told to move and work remotely from our homes. And then I was sat at my desk at home. I say desk, it was a makeshift desk next to my bed. And we had a flat up in Swiss Cottage, like near Primrose Hill, London. And my wife was with our son in the other bedroom, and in the other bedroom, in the living room. And I remember just thinking to myself, what the hell is going on over here? What's all this money printing? What's all this stimulus happening? And I thought to myself, I'm also working from this computer. I could be doing this anywhere in the world. So
Yeah.
so then I had the the light bulb by a moment, and I was like, I could be doing this from Belgrade. So I decided. I got up, walked over to the living room. I was like, Dana, her name is Dana. Dana, we're moving to Belgrade. And she's like, okay, when? Soon as possible. We don't know when things are going to get rough or rougher or something like that. So that was already by April. So by June 20, by June, we had end of June. So Vidovdan, which is June 28th, 2020, we'd moved to Belgrade. Vidovdan it's a big day in our history. That's when the Serbs won the Battle of Kosovo in the 12th century, and it was the Prince Lazar Nemanja Saint Day. That's a big day in our calendar. And the fact that I bought tickets on that day without realizing there was Vidovdan and we moved there on that day, it was kind of spooky. Then, sorry, how is this linked to my Bitcoin story? All this was happening. I was like, what's going on with the world? What is all this money printing going on? Why are we getting all this quantitative easing? Why is the markets acting irrationally? And I was like, I have this Bitcoin thing. I'm going to study it more. So I joined Bitcoin Twitter. I bought the Bitcoin Standard, and I got studying. In Bitcoin Twitter, came across Michael Saylor later on that year. I was like, whoa, who the hell is that? He's quite eloquent and quite the spokesman for Bitcoin. He was delivering those amazing speech messages. Safety's book was a hard digest, but I realized, okay, this is it. I get it now. And Bitcoin Twitter with all the memes and everything. I mean, some of the Bitcoin Twitter is just incredibly funny, but some of it's really serious, and there's a lot of intelligent individuals there. I joined Bitcoin Twitter thinking, I'll maybe find something else about other crypto stuff, but I just instantly picked up on this Bitcoin v crypto coin sort of sentiment. And I kind of obviously gravitated towards Bitcoin instantly when I did that. And next thing I know, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I have the keys of the future in my pockets, and everything else doesn't really make much sense. And that's when I realized that that Bitcoin will be a big part of my life. So I studied more, I stacked more, and I sold all the other crypto coins, whatever you call them, that I had. And by 2021, I was a full-fledged maxi, I guess. And there was moments like in 2021 when China banned mining within their borders. They had about, as you know, the 60% of the hash rate. And I saw this, and I saw the difficulty adjustment of Bitcoin playing out beautifully, and how Bitcoin just decentralized further. It was like cutting off the head of a snake, and 20 other heads just grew. And I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That adjustment, I kind of linked it towards the interest rates of the traditional finance world. How when the economy grows, they rise interest rates to kind of cool down the economy. Well, when the economy is slowing down, they obviously put interest rates at zero negative, which obviously doesn't make that much sense. But that's the way to spur the growth of the economy. That all didn't make sense, but the adjustment of Bitcoin's difficulty adjustment, when there's more miners coming on, when there's more hash power coming on, and how every 2 weeks that's readjusted, I thought that for me was one of those big sort of awakening moments. Obviously, it was a gradual process becoming a Bitcoin maximalist, but that was one of the big ones.
On that one, what was fascinating for me? It was like I was just thinking about, like, if Google lost half of their data centers, like they went down for whatever, right? Like it would be catastrophic because of the way that they handle resourcing. So like the resourcing would get loaded over to some other data center, and they couldn't handle it if they lost
exactly. What if Amazon, AWS? What if they lost half their data centers? It would be catastrophic. Everyone there trying to buy. I was a big Amazon buyer, by the way, before I moved to Belgrade, because we don't have Amazon here. So I was a big consumer, kind of instant gratification. Saw stuff on Amazon, buying stuff. It was easy, get delivered to my desk at work. Bam, bam, bam. It's so easy. When I came here, realized that Amazon's not available. Oh, I gotta I gotta find stuff. I gotta just be happy with what I have. And that taught me. But going back to what you say, yeah, if Amazon, if Google, if Facebook, if any of those big guys lost half of their service, there would be mass panic, you know.
Wrecked. Yeah.
Yeah, wrecked.
And I
Well,
mean, there wasn't
not with Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, it just makes
no.
it stronger, anti-fragile at its best. You know, thank you, Naib Taleb, you know, wrote the foreword to Bitcoin Standard, but we know the story there with safety. So turns out he wasn't very anti-fragile himself.
For people that are maybe listening to this that aren't intimately dialed into the Bitcoin space, there was a little bit of a dust up between Saifedean Ammous and
Nassim Taleb. That's
my
it. Yeah.
goodness. Yeah. But anyway, you know, you made this comment about COVID. And I think when I'm getting to the root, I'm curious what you think the root is. But to me, it seems like it was the whole world just had the blinder pulled up on the quote unquote experts through all of that. And it just made people question kind of everything. Is that what it was, or was there something else?
That was it for me as well. It was so strange living in London. Then you see drips of it happening, coming through the news, like this was in January, like COVID in China, some cases here and there. You're not really worrying about it. Then all of a sudden it starts coming to Europe or something. You're like, okay, that's strange. And you're like, okay, you don't think much of it. And then people are talking about, oh, things are gonna be locked down. We're gonna have to go home and stuff. It's like, well, but like, this thing only kills people of like above 82 years old. It's like it kills people of the average age of 82, so it's higher than the life expectancy of people, and only kills people who have one or two or more comorbidities. So it didn't make much sense. And we're going to lock down the economies. We're going to close schools because of this. I questioned that at the beginning, but then because of the force of the propaganda, I obviously kind of got along with it, but still it was doing my head in. And I was at home. I remember lying down on the floor, like after work with my wife in the room, in the living room, holding my head and saying, what's going on with this world? Basically, something's not right. And we were sort of we were half bought into it, basically. Then moving to Serbia was quite the, I say red pill moment, as well as orange pill for myself, but red pill for my wife, because she's a Bitcoiner because she's my wife. But
I think there's a lot of wives like that.
Yeah, exactly. But moving to Serbia, and then we saw that how life could be completely open, and that how life was completely open. People that weren't really, mask wearing in London. I got to say that people weren't wearing masks in London. That was great. But the way they shut down schools, the way they shut down everything in London and all the social distancing stuff, they weren't paying attention to that in Serbia, even though they had very strict lockdowns in April 2020 in Serbia, Chinese style. They tried to repeat them in July after the government got 2/3 of the parliamentary of the seats in parliament, so they had a majority. So they tried to enforce those lockdowns again. Power grab, whatever it was, tried to impose tyranny, anything. I have no idea. But the Serbs, being Serbs, were like, we're not having that, and went to the street, took to the streets. A revolution was about to happen. And the government realized they overstepped their mark. And obviously those tough lockdown Chinese-style Orwellian style lockdowns were not imposed on us. And instead they had some, like, not curfews, but like some businesses, social businesses can't be opening after 8 or 9 or something like that. So, but life actually continued. And we were loving it because we could actually get on with our lives. Our son was able to go to, he just turned 2 just before COVID. So he was able to join a kindergarten in September 2020 and didn't have to wear a mask or anything. And it was great. I mean, schools were open, things were happening, and life was kind of going on like usual, but there was still some restrictions, but nothing like the West, nothing like in UK, Spain, Italy, France, Germany, and those places. So that was really an awakening moment for me. Well, of what was, you look at what's happening in the West and compare it to what's happening in the parts of the East and what people were saying, and it was troubling, actually. I found it unsettling, but that's what also drove me closer to becoming a Bitcoiner.
So you have a lot of conversations with world leaders and people in prominent places. Is this something that this conversation that you and I are having right now, is everybody in the world at the highest levels having these conversations, in your opinion?
No,
No.
maybe they are in close circles, but we speak because so I joined Jan3. That's a company that Samson Mao started. For those listeners who don't know what Samson Mao is, he's a established Bitcoin maximist who was a big executive Blockstream. Blockstream, one of the biggest Bitcoin only companies out there. And he then in 2022 decided to start his own startup called Jan3. January 3 was a reference to the first block mine in January 3rd, 2009. And Jan3 is a company dedicated to hyper Bitcoinization, or basically nation state adoption and spreading the word of Bitcoin to nation states and trying to speed up Bitcoin adoption all over the world. And we have our technologies that are that to like we have our wallet, Aqua wallets, and we buy and sell Bitcoin, and we work on some other projects for revenue. But otherwise, we're known as a nation state adoption Bitcoin company, which means that so how did I get in there? Sorry, when I became a public Bitcoiner in 2022, after going on a talk show here with my wife, the biggest talk show in Serbia, the host figured out, because we met with him 3 days before to have a chat just to get to know each other, and he figured out I was into Bitcoin. And when we did the recording 3 days later, he interrupted me while I was talking about my current traditional finance job. I wasn't not showing much passion about that. So is now a good time to talk about crypto? And that obviously was a good time for me to talk about not crypto. It's all about Bitcoin. And then that went viral because I talked 3 minutes afterwards. I kind of went on a monologue about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I'm on podcasts. My first podcast was Daniel Prince's Once Bitten podcast. And then I'm then on Safety in the Moose's podcast, which was like for me a proper surreal moment. Having listened to his podcast, he's like reaching out to me in my DMs and like, oh my God, Safety's reaching out to me in my DMs. This is insane. He's like he's telling me how Bitcoin can bring back monarchies and stuff. I was like, yes, that's true. And then I'm on his podcast talking about democracy versus monarchy and stuff and Bitcoin. It was great. Then I get invited to Miami, and at Miami I met Samson, and he instantly just like, oh, I want to hire you. I'm looking for people for my company. Do you want to join? I was like, yes. I didn't really think twice because I was looking to get to exit out of my traditional finance job. Because at that point, 2 years of being a Bitcoiner and working traditional finance, I didn't really feel that I was in the right place. So that goes back to your question about meeting presidents and other people.
Yeah.
So we try to make conversations with leaders around the world and people around the world, but it's obviously to talk about Bitcoin. And number one, trying to start a conversation with a leader around the world. If I try to initiate a conversation by maybe initiating starting a diplomatic line with a leader or somewhere with an embassy, and I say I want to talk to that leader about Bitcoin, that doesn't go anywhere.
Really?
No, it doesn't go anywhere. People, especially in the European Union, other parts of the world maybe, but what we rely on mainly is connections that I have already. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, I would say is other Bitcoiners around the world. Mm-hmm. Other Bitcoiners around the world are passionate, hardworking, good souls who want obviously to spread the meaning and the love and the utility of Bitcoin. And they have gone to then speak to their local elected official and stuff about Bitcoin. And so they've obviously identified somebody that's open to talk about it, and then they need some help. So quite a lot of times we get a lot of messages, emails coming from random people, random Bitcoiners all over the world. And then we start a group with them. Bitcoin, so Jan3 with a certain country. And then from there, we can get some meetings because we have some Bitcoiners around the world have identified a politician, a minister, or even a president that's open to talk about it. And I'm afraid that unless it's very private conversation, that the whole COVID doesn't really come up.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. So it's really truly ground roots, people on the ground that are then kind of initiating, that maybe have a slight bit of access to whoever the elected body is in whatever country. And then it's kind of from the bottom up.
Obviously, that's because we totally understand that Bitcoin is a bottom-up strategy. It's a grassroots effort. It's what I talked about. It's that, well, as we know, it's decentralization at its finest. You can't stop it from growing on the ground, but top down, there's not much help happening there. So we believe that there is a need for maybe some individuals or some companies or people to work with some leaders around the world and to basically understand Bitcoin, because they can reach a bigger audience. They can able to market Bitcoin. They can understand that it's good for not just for them, because I know leaders are very, they look after themselves, but also they can have to look after their futures, and they have to look after their people. If they want people to vote for them, then we tell them that Bitcoin's good for them. Bitcoin's good for their people. Bitcoin's good for society. Bitcoin fixes a lot of issues. It doesn't just fix money, but it fixes energy. It fixes politics. It fixes so many parts of our lives. And we need to sell this to them. And there's ways of strategies that we can engage with these jurisdictions, I say, or local authorities around the world. And obviously the Bukele example is a very rare one. I mean, I think that's not going to happen for a while, but never say never. After a bull run, you never know what's going to happen. But that, for viewers who don't know what Bukele is, the president of El Salvador. He adopted Bitcoin in 2021 alongside the dollar as their legal tender. So El Salvadorans are free to use the dollar and Bitcoin as their currency. And they were given a wallet by the president with $30 in that wallet in Bitcoin, and they're able to buy and sell Bitcoin freely. And this was beautiful. But what he did right, Bukele, was to give them the option: use either fiat dollars or Bitcoin. The Chiva wallet has some teething problems in the beginning and stuff. There were some problems. Obviously, government doesn't do tech well, but it got there and it works. And now El Salvador is, thanks to his other policies of taking down the gangs and now turning into the safest country in the world and opening up tourism, but also his technology laws of making it less taxable on most industries there, that it's become a very competitive country. So it's not only safe, but it's a very competitive state. And as a result, people are moving back. El Salvadorians are moving back, and people around the world are like, I want to live in El Salvador because they're offering me X, Y, and Z. And it's a place that's what my country's not offering. So anyway, I think El Salvador, as an example, I think hopefully that will be picked up, and we see the ripple effects of El Salvador happening in other Central American countries. But it's still tough because they don't have a Bukele moment. The Bukele moment was that he was uncorruptible, he was rich, and when he came to power, he could easily do what was needed. And luckily, he was a good player, a Bitcoiner, and Bitcoin maximalist, and did the right things. But that happening in other countries is difficult, especially with all these elaborate democratical or tyrannical or whatever systems are happening around the world.
Yeah.
So the other two strategies that we try to focus on as well is just as a store of value. I mean, that's what Bitcoin is technically right now. I mean, as a currency, it's going to be there one day. But I think right now, I mean, this is the salient argument that Bitcoin is a store of value. It's doesn't want to, it's also, he doesn't want to. I say many people think it's happy the way it is right now, ossification and all that.
Yeah.
And so we try and advise governments or people to, and not just governments, but also companies and stuff to hold it on their balance sheet as on their treasury, because it's better than holding cash. Just what Michael Saylor says. Basically, Michael Saylor is much better at talking to people about this than I am. So store of value is another thing. The other thing is energy. Bitcoin fixes energy. Bitcoin is an energy-backed money. So Bitcoin miners are looking for the cheapest form of energy. That is good for civilization. When you have the incentive of something that makes money, that's looking for the cheapest form of energy, that's going to bring you good energy. And then, how to put it? Basically, the cheapest forms of energy out there are stranded or wasted energy. And these are in places where in electrical grids that have inefficiencies, where Bitcoin miners can then plug themselves into those stranded, wasted, inefficient areas, and you can start some power purchasement agreement with the electrical grid, with the state or so forth, and they can start mining Bitcoin. When that grid then has some stress through hot weather, like it is today in Belgrade, it's 37 degrees. That's going to cause a lot of people to turn on their air conditionings. That's going to put a stress on the grid. That can lead to some blackouts. Or when it's freezing, it can be minus 20 or 30 here, degrees centigrade, that is. That's going to put some stress on the grid as well. Then Bitcoin miners can then sell the electricity back, or just turn off their miners, depending on the agreement they have, back to the electrical grid, and it stops rolling blackouts altogether. You have fortified to strengthen that grid completely. Also for renewables, whether you're into it or not, I'm not into obviously wind and solar, but other renewables like hydro and geothermal, it's pushing people to find clever sources or ways of finding or using hydro when it's not being used to convert that energy into money, and then that money is then used to money, as in Bitcoin. And when I say money, I think Bitcoin. that Bitcoin is used for infrastructure projects, and so basically, so what we're doing is we try to create joint ventures with other states, with other local authorities out there, and being in a joint venture with local authorities, some government, when they're involved in Bitcoin, then they will tend to be kinder to Bitcoin, and then they will tend to understand what the values of Bitcoin is, and then they will then be better in regulating Bitcoin. Yes, Bitcoin doesn't need regulation, but the rest of crypto does. And maybe they will stop, create better regulations and differentiate Bitcoin from the rest, take away capital gains tax from Bitcoin, allow it to flow freely. So that's what we're trying.
On the energy front, I think in like 5 to 10 years, it's going to become abundantly clear to the rest of the world how demanding AI is for energy consumption. And I think when we look at the existing energy grid, there's so little nuclear kind of in the mix as a percentage. And for where I think we're going with respect to AI and the energy demands, you're in this unique situation where you almost have like a chicken and egg scenario, where you're going to have a lot of countries around the world that don't want to like build out like this really intense infrastructure, call it nuclear, because there's just not enough of a demand signal locally there at the moment based off of the population's demand to build it, and then hopefully the AI data centers come or whatever, right? And I think when you look at what Bitcoin really offers, it's offering a turnkey. If you build it, you can stick these things here and immediately have somebody that's willing to buy all that excess energy. And then you can bring in the artificial intelligence data centers, and now your country that might not have been real competitive on the AI front for running all these models locally in whatever jurisdiction we're talking about, now has a pathway to be competitive on the global landscape with respect to AI. And I don't think people are talking about this today.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in Europe, could be right now. Maybe in the States, less so. I'm not too familiar with the States, but Europe is suffering energy-wise.
Yeah.
Especially in the EU, we have these terrible laws coming into effect, these directives coming in from the EU Commission to try and move us to renewable energy sources, and a lot of subsidies being pumped into solar and wind. And as we know, solar and wind are not good for baseload energy.
No.
Completely terrible. So there's an abundance of now solar and wind, but these types of energy are not good. So this is destroying our energy capacity. Plus, with the conflict with Ukraine and Russia, where a lot of Europe especially Germany, got its energy from Russia.
Hmm.
And now it does not get its energy from Russia. We know the story about Nord Stream 2 and who blew that up. Anyway, let's not get into that. But we know what these, it's Europe is shooting itself in the foot
Yeah.
right now with energy. So we are paying sky high prices for energy right now. And that shouldn't be the case.
No.
We could have so much abundant energy here. We have so many good hydro sources, geothermal sources in Serbia alone. I want to get Serbia to be an energy autonomous, independent, sovereign, thanks to its ability for its geothermal. We are sitting on so much geothermal activity, but obviously it costs too much. You need to lower your time preference to access it. But if you hook it up with if you side by side it with let's say bootstrap it with Bitcoin mining, then
Yes.
we're talking. But that's
Yes.
something for the
Do,
future.
so
But
do all these people and the elected officials in the European Union, do they just have to experience more pain in order to come to this realization,
it's
or
a
like?
crazy one because right now nuclear is being it's been shunned, completely shunned, especially in
Mhm.
Germany. It seems like the coal lobbyists in Germany are the ones who are pushing the left libtards to say that coal is a better option than nuclear, because coal has come back with a vengeance in Germany. Look, I don't have much against coal, but it's a dirty source of energy. It does pollute the air. You can obviously stick some filters on it and clean it up. But Germany has great potential for nuclear. So does anywhere in the world, really, but
Mhm.
especially Germany. But what happened in Germany, instead of them going nuclear, which is much cleaner, they've gone to coal. And this has been driven by a lot of the Germany power structure is that the Greens have some of that are in the coalition, and you would expect that with Greens in the coalition that they wouldn't go for coal, but apparently that's the case. So apparently coal is not as bad for the environment as nuclear. Yeah,
Anybody
we've
that's
heard.
but Philip, anybody who's done even the smallest bit of research, 2 or 3 layers deep on nuclear, they understand that there are tremendous safety changes that have happened over the last, call it 20 or
Yes,
30 years on nuclear. But I think it's such a divisive word,
it is.
and the public is so superficial in their knowledge and understanding, and there's no type of campaign that's being pushed out there to properly educate the populace as to the risks and the benefits of nuclear, that it's such an easy political smashing of the hammer of like, okay,
Right.
well, we're not even
But
considering this, right? That's
as you said, that word nuclear triggers a lot of people. It's the same
yes.
thing as like I put it up there with abortion, basically. You would get the
Hmm.
similar divisions on that. But I guess I don't know what it is. I don't know. I'm thinking that they know that, and I think someone knows that nuclear could save us completely. And it's
Yeah.
almost like a free energy source. Yes, it requires investment. Well, once it gets going, it's beautiful and you
Yeah.
do it properly. But look at, I think maybe people looking back at Japan in 2010 when Fukushima, was it Fukushima, blew
Yeah.
up,
The earthquake.
and
Yeah.
yeah, that was quite a horrible incident. But that was their fault for putting a plant right on the water, like right on top of the Pacific Rim,
Fault line.
where
Yeah.
there's a lot,
Ring
yeah,
of
fault
fire.
line, yeah, right in front of where tidal waves can hit it and stuff. But we're talking Germany, man. We're talking like
Yeah.
almost landlocked country, right in the center. The only thing that they get is the occasional, I don't know, hailstorm. And I think
Yes.
nuclear power plants can withstand a hailstorm and where this isn't, I don't know, I think it's ridiculous that we haven't gone nuclear. I
Yeah.
can understand that countries like Serbia that don't have the resources will not go for nuclear because it requires a lot of investments and stuff. But that's why I'm gunning for geothermal. We have the geothermal activity over here. We just need the investment and the Bitcoin miners to bootstrap that. But nuclear was the biggest energy source in France. They started to try and shut that down. But France was a leader in nuclear energy, and it's like that's not being studied or looked at or appreciated enough. I think France, I wish that the model for France could have been replicated in other countries. We wouldn't be in the problem today because our energy bills all over Europe are sky high.
When I heard you say about it not happening in Serbia, I'm just thinking about, you know, if you could get a group of politicians that could lay down some type of public partnership with one of these large mining companies to uh, work together in building the infrastructure for the power, call it nuclear. And then they get some type of fixed rate energy or percentage wise or whatever based off of the, let's say they guarantee a price of 4 cents per kilowatt hour, and then maybe it goes within a 5 cent after a certain time frame after that. But there's something that's like put in place with the miner. The build out is enormous from an energy perspective, and then the miners are then cooperating with the state to say we will soak up at least 30 or 40% of this excess within a certain time frame. And there's this relationship that is set in place that gives the state this incredible resource, the power, and they're also able to set up and from the miners' perspective, like one of their biggest risks is the political risk of being thrown out of a certain region after they spent all this money building the infrastructure and putting it all in place. And so there's this opportunity for this win-win relationship between the state and miners, that they get the duration of guaranteed, we will not kick you out for 20 years or whatever it is, right? And
But that requires having to go against the short-termness of the democratic rules, not just in Serbia but in most parts of Europe, and they don't think about the long term. A nuclear power plant is not something that you build in 4 years, 5 years in a one election cycle. So that's where the issue is. I think it will require some private ventures maybe, or it will require a good state actor for that to happen. But it can happen. It will happen. There was talk about nuclear here before, but it's kind of fizzled out. I don't know what the latest is, basically, but it's something I'm not that read up in, and I should be. Yeah, but I think it can. Yeah, I think it can happen.
One of the most common questions I get asked from family and friends is, Preston, where do you personally buy your Bitcoin from? And the answer is really simple. I buy it on river.com. Not only can you easily buy Bitcoin with zero fees on recurring orders, you can have peace of mind knowing Bitcoin on River is held one-to-one in multi-sig cold storage, all while being fully licensed and regulated in the United States. Plus, their relationship managers are US-based and available by phone for you or your business. Additionally, River has built their own infrastructure from the ground up, which means they don't rely on third parties to function like other Bitcoin exchanges. River also just created a new feature not found anywhere else called River Link. It allows you to send Bitcoin over a text message to easily orange pill your family, pay a friend for dinner, or send a gift. There's a new standard for investing in Bitcoin, and River is setting it. Go to river.com/fundamentals and get up to $100 free when you sign up and buy Bitcoin. That's river.com/fundamentals. In a world where convenience often compromises security, many investors settle for solutions that do not fully meet the demands of Bitcoin security. That's where the Bitcoin Way comes in. Offering a personalized white glove service, they will guide you through every step of the way to achieve full self-custody, ensuring you adhere to the strictest self-custody standards. Their experienced team helps establish robust security practices that cover all aspects of self-custody, cybersecurity, and privacy. Their ultimate goal? To empower you to become fully sovereign. Beyond securing your Bitcoin, they also offer services such as inheritance planning, Plan B strategies, assisting in relocating to Bitcoin-friendly locations to further enhance your sovereignty, and much, much more. Take the first step to true financial independence. Visit thebitcoinway.com/TIP to schedule your free consultation call. Don't delay in securing your generational wealth the right way. Opt in for security over convenience and protect your future. Your family line will thank you.
Yeah, but I think you bring up an interesting point. It seems like politics all over the planet are heavily biased towards this short-term thinking or this time preference, right? Does Bitcoin change this with time? Are we talking 20 years? Are we calling it multiple decades before the impact of Bitcoin's time preference starts rubbing off into even politics? Or is it something that never penetrates that?
I think it will penetrate at some point. Firstly, it's the sentiment of Bitcoin. As you see, Bitcoin it goes after its halving cycle. After its halving, it becomes scarcer. It stopped the flow. The ratio goes up, and then it starts to become the price goes up, and people start to it gets FOMO and stuff, and that it taps into the human psyche of sentiment, fear of missing out and all that. And that's part of what drives adoption, right? So that's always going to be a player. But we have seen recently in the States that Trump, for example, an old former president, and hopefully could be the next president, saying things like, "Oh, I'm going to protect your self-custody," which is huge. Like the fact that he said self-custody, and I'm going to protect your ability to self-custody, and I'm going to stop Elizabeth Warren and her goons from touching your Bitcoins, plural. I like the way he said Bitcoins, plural. That is huge. So obviously they're realizing that there's a lot of crypto guys. I mean, I have to say it, but that's because a lot of people, I don't know how many Americans, 50, 70 million Americans that own crypto who are voters. So if you're not kind to these guys, you're going to lose a lot of votes. So this is what the Biden administration has got to wake up to. Obviously, they were not kind to Bitcoin in the last 4 years. They did the bare minimum, and if anything, they were actually trying to destroy the mining industry in the US and impose those heavy 30, 20 or 30% taxes on all mining activity. Just follow Pierre Rochard on that. It's fantastic. He's great at updating us on that whole shenanigans of what they're doing. But they're now with Trump saying, "No, I'm going to protect your Bitcoins. Now, mining is actually good for the country. Now we should be the best Bitcoin miners. We're going to mine all the Bitcoin in the world. We are going to be number one in the Bitcoin." That's fantastic. That's what it should be like. That's what every country should be like, because it's the first countries who adopt it. So El Salvador is way ahead of everyone. They're gonna be miles ahead of civilization. They're gonna be like, I don't know, like in that film Dune and something like that. They're gonna be those guys like running the whole place.
I think this next cycle is really going to highlight how progressive and forward thinking Bukele is in another
exactly. And so he's lowered his time preference, so he benefits, and he's played the game theory like way before everyone. So he's cool. He's awesome. But now when I'm talking about other nations, I think so. America now, we've had Trump, we even had RFK Jr., we have a lot of other senators, we have Cynthia Lummis, we have Ron Paul kind of, advocating for it, but especially Cynthia Lummis. We have some big political players in America are advocating for Bitcoin. And that is huge. And especially coming from Trump, who was all anti-crypto, so all US dollar, which I understood his position because he's just, American number one, which is a good position to have, because actually it led to a better foreign policy, but let's not go there. Yes, so now we have American presidents talking about Bitcoin, and that's fantastic. So I think that Bitcoin is going to be on candidates' platforms. In the next 10 years, you're going to have, on average, about 2 election cycles across the world. And you'll see by the second election cycle, I think Bitcoin is going to appear in a lot of their on their platforms, because they realize that people are becoming aware of the farce that is the current global financial system, of what they will start to learn about fractional reserve lending and banking. They will start to understand what fiat is all about and how it's created. And they will start to think, maybe I should take sovereignty of my own money and stuff. So people will start to look at gold and property and stuff like that. But a lot of people will actually wake up and start to study Bitcoin and realize that that's the best option. So that's happening at an incredible rate. I say an incredible rate. I think, it's plateaued a little bit, as in it's still increasing over the bear market and stuff. But now we haven't seen retail hit the market yet in this run, but we've seen institutional money hit the market big time. That was thanks to, obviously, as everyone, well, most listeners here should know, that in early January, I think it's January 11th, about 12 or so Bitcoin spot ETFs were approved in the United States. And that's huge. When gold spot ETFs were approved in 2004, that 5x the price of gold. The years afterwards, with Bitcoin approved spot ETF, that hasn't shown. We haven't had a three. We've had like a 3x now. No, I think it was
I want to say it was like around 25 or 35 on the approval.
About 35. It's about 35. So it's definitely 2x, but we're still in the beginning. You know, we're still right at the beginning of that right now, and we still are. Yeah, I think. But basically, that institutional adoption, that was a big part of institutional adoption, is spot ETFs coming in. I don't agree with it. It's not Bitcoin. It's obviously you're not getting you're just getting exposure to the thing, but not actually buying the thing, which is something I don't support. But in terms of gaining traction and people becoming aware, and also institutions that weren't able to buy the thing before can now do it because they're able to buy ETFs that are financial products in the old traditional financial world, then that's actually bringing a lot of money into Bitcoin. It's going to drive the price up. Yeah, I think that's gonna then lead to a huge supply constraint shock soon, because we all know that Bitcoin had a halving on the 20th of April. I hope it was. I don't think it was 2040. It was a 2140, depending what time zone you're in. But that led to from 900 coins being produced every day to 450, and now these ETFs are sucking up about 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 coins a day. So the maths is suggesting that there's going to be a huge supply shock soon.
Yeah.
And as Samson says, that we're going to get the Omega candle.
The Omega.
Or as Adam Back, the Godzilla candle or something, or as Max Kaiser says, the God candle or something like that. But and that's when retail comes in and stuff. But yeah, it's going to be interesting that we're going to see, going back to time preference, as I think people will start to. I have now lowered my time preference after learning and studying about Bitcoin, and actually that I'm able to put my wealth away in something that is indestructible, that has all the properties of money. It's durable, it's portable, it's fungible, it's most importantly scarce, I think. And their acceptability now is something that it's had 14, 15 years of a track record. Now you can say that it's actually it's viable, it's there. So it ticks all those boxes, whereas gold only ticked a few of those boxes. Obviously, the gold is not very divisible. Yes, it's very, very, very durable, but portability is a huge issue with gold. And that's what led, gold standards ultimately lead to a fiat standard. So fiat, obviously not scarce, but obviously very, not durable. I don't think very durable, but very, very portable and very divisible. But when it comes to scarcity, terrible. And that's what's killing us all. That's what's creating the cost of living crisis, because they can't stop printing that. So I think people are going to wake up to this, and I've woken up to it. And I think it's something that we can store our wealth in, something that they can't take away from. They can look at it, they can see it, because it's there. It's your pseudonymous. Your keys are kind of open to the public, right? But they can't do anything. Yeah, they got to come and take it away from me with a bloody big wrench. But you have ways of mitigating that, and you have ways of doing multi-sig and stuff like that. But just so everyone's aware, I kind of lost my Bitcoin the other day. I was out on a boat and I've lost it all, so I got to start from scratch. But I know very well that I'm stacking again. I have very little, but I know very well that even if I stack now, we are still super, super early. So yeah,
I love it. Okay, this question is going to change gears a little bit, but this was when I'm coming up with questions. This was my favorite one to ask you. What is the best part and the worst part of being a prince?
Big pause.
For people that are not seeing the YouTube feed, Prince Philip's face was like, do I have to answer this?
Cheers,
Start off with
Preston. Cheers.
Start off with the best part. Start off
The
with the best part.
the best parts. Ooh. You know, it's not easy being a prince. People think it's easy, but hey, look, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna play a victim over here. I'm gonna say, this is not a very Bitcoiner thing to do, but look, this is also why we all should be Bitcoiners. Because the best thing about being a prince can also be the worst thing about being a prince. The best
Amen.
thing is, yes. So my family I'm from the Karađorđević dynasty. Our dynasty was born from Karađorđe, who led the first revolution, uprising, I should say. I don't like the word revolution. That's a communist word, I think. Who started an uprising against the Ottoman Empire in 1804. And Serbia was under Ottoman Empire tyrannical rule. We were slaves to them, essentially, for centuries, for about 300-400 years. But Karađorđe in 1804 was an affluent pig farmer, like livestock merchant, and in the Šumadija region, which is very close to Belgrade, he gathered him and his and some other Serbs got together in a meeting in Sretenje, which is the 14th. They had the meeting on the 14th of February, 1804, where they decided that they would start the uprising against the Ottoman Empire. He was actually chosen. He wasn't the first or third or second elected. He was a third elected, but they went for him because the first elected and the second elected said they had some conflicting interests, this and that. I'm not going to get into the details, but it was chosen that Karađorđe would lead the army to uprise against the Ottomans because of his. Let's say he was quite a base individual. He was over 2 meters tall. Karađorđe means Black George in Turkish. He was a good decision maker. You know, he would make harsh decisions and stuff. So he had the right makeup for a good general in this situation where the odds were stacked up against us. But he managed to lead an uprising and gather enough strength that it liberated Serbia out of Ottoman rule. And then you could see in the old maps of Europe, that the Ottoman Empire, with big, like, blob over most of southeastern Europe. Then in 1804, in the middle of that sea of Ottoman Empire, this little boop, Serbia just appears out of there. That's Karađorđe and leading the uprising. Then that kind of failed after a while, and then there was a second uprising by the Obrenović dynasty, and then that properly secured Serbia's independence from the Ottoman Empire. We were a principality under the Ottoman Empire, but what led after that is that there was two competing dynasties, which was the Obrenović and the Karađorđević dynasty. The Obrenović were, by the end of the century, by 1902, there was a regicide. They were killed off because they weren't playing well. People blame that on the Karađorđevićes, but that's not true. But King Peter I was then put to power again. Well, not again. He was put to power in 1903, and anyway. This is going to history. What I'm trying to say is that we, as a family, we were the leaders of the country. We established democracy. I hate to say it, but we established a democracy that worked. It was actually more of a like a constitutional monarchy, but with more rights to the monarchy than to the other side, the constitute to democracy. So it was like a bit of an absolute and monarchy, absolute monarchy and democratic rule at the same time. This then led to the creation of Yugoslavia, because Yugoslavia, King Alexander, King Peter I's son, created Yugoslavia as a way to protect the region against the growing threat of the Austro-Hungarians. And basically this was during the time when Serbia was the monarchies were creating a lot of wealth, and it was a very good environment for asset creation. Money was backed by gold, and people were making lives for themselves, and things were more or less stable, apart from times in the First World War and the Second World War. But this is pre-First World War, post-First World War, and now pre-Second World War. We had accumulated. We had done a lot of business. We owned some gold mines. We did a lot of trade here and there, and we built a lot of properties. And we had palaces that my great grandfather built here in Belgrade, and we had the palace in downtown and stuff that he gifted to the state, to the people of Serbia and stuff like that. And this was all done through private money, but we had good, strong private property rights. That's what's was important. Is the monarchy is all about having strong private property rights. What then happened? Second World War is after the Second World War was that socialism, communism came about, and they have very poor or little or nothing, no property rights, and everything was taken away from us, confiscated. Even until this day, it's still confiscated. So had I been born pre-Second World War, I would have had a lot. Now born post-Second World War, I have nothing. So we were, yeah, that's the thing. So that, I think, you know, some princes out there or royal families are in better I say not better off, but they obviously have a little bit more comfort, a bit more luxury. They are part of the system. They are they have properties that they've been inherited, because that's how good royal family monarchy is, how descendancy, how succession works, is you look after your property for your sons and all that. And when it came to the Karađorđević family, there was nothing handed over to me. So I've got to fight for this again. But that's why maybe I became a Bitcoiner. And that's maybe a good and bad thing. That's turned me into someone who's a staunch supporter and advocate for private property rights.
Yeah.
A freedom fighter. And that's why Bitcoin resonated so much for me, because as you know very well, that Bitcoin is an example of property that it's almost impossible. It's that you can't take away with no dispute. When you buy Bitcoin, you're buying something that you can't, that it's indisputably yours. When you're buying land, you could go back and you could argue with someone that, you know, like 2-3 centuries ago, this land used to belong to X, that nation used to be here, and blah, blah, blah. And you can bring all this sort of stuff up. But when it comes to Bitcoin, no, the definition of private property, of rights, and of what ownership, I should say, is much more clear when it comes to Bitcoin. So this is, and I think that will help with future arbitrary processes and law processes. That I think that Bitcoin is going to wake up a lot of people to what the value is of private property. And I think that's what the good thing and bad thing about being a prince is, in my position. That's me and Philip as being a prince. That I was born with essentially nothing. Okay, I was born in the United States. I don't know if people know this. My family, not too wealthy, but, you know, they had, you know, we went to decent schools and all that, and they gave us a decent life. My parents separated. I went to live in Spain with my mother. She's a Brazilian princess. But then my father remarried to some random Greek, and we had to move to London to be with him. Went to a boarding school and then went to university. Then all of a sudden, Serbia, we were allowed to go back to Yugoslavia 2001 when after Milosevic got ousted. But we were allowed to then live in the palace, but the palace is still owned by the state, still confiscated by the state. Now, this is where it gets, you know, debatable. Where the palace should it be owned by the people? Or should it be owned by the family? I mean, I'm obviously on the camp that it should be owned by the family, and we should be able to do what we please with it. But no way am I going to sell it away just to get money and leave the country. No, I'm fully invested in this country. I will find ways of monetizing that property, or figuring out ways of restoring it. And it has a lot of work that needs to be done. But doing so, I don't know I'm going with this conversation, but yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is that in my position, it's great being a prince. You get a lot of attention. You have a spotlight. And if I hope I have good intent, I have good morals. And if I have good morals, then maybe I can use that to help other people. But then I guess if you're a bad actor, if you're spoiled or whatever, and then I'm going to say that maybe there's disadvantages of being a prince, is that you get attention, and you obviously in a fiat world with all the fiat perverse incentives that can actually go negative, and you end up just being one of these instant gratification players and all that sort of stuff.
You know, I interview a lot of people, and I've heard through the years from people that are just ultra successful. They say to me, Preston, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And it's about the trend of that journey. And when I hear your story and I hear what you're explaining, I'm thinking to myself, like, what an incredible place to be, to be able to kind of point the attention. You're talking about the attention that naturally comes with the position,
Hmm.
but also being so based on your background and what your family has experienced through all of this, to be able to shine a light on property rights, and to shine a light on what real money is and
Hmm.
how it benefits humanity. And you wouldn't have that opportunity without the 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 hardship that the family has experienced through
Right.
everything that was kind of taken away through the years in the past, and going through socialism and all these things, that the hardships that were endured. And it's almost like if you were going to play a video game, and you could start off with like all these skills, and it was just kind of easy to kind of like go through the whole game, and you just completed it. It's kind of like you got to the end and it was like, well, there was no journey, because the
Yeah.
journey was just like really simple, and you could just play it and just win, and
Well,
it wasn't
that's
even
why
hard, right?
games like Zelda did so well in my Super
Yeah,
Mario, because they were proper journeys.
they
And
were proper
this,
journeys.
yeah,
The hero's journey, right?
the
Like,
hero's journey. Yeah, exactly.
oh no, I love.
Yeah, well,
And
I'm not saying that I'm a hero, but I'm saying that it's tough. I'm up. We are, all of us.
yeah,
You, me, all those Bitcoiners, even non-coiners, people who are just aware, non-coiners or pre-coiners who are just aware of what's going on out there. But the number one issue that we are all facing over here is our invasion and our the demolishment, I guess is the word, of private property rights. It seems to be happening at an accelerated rate over the last 70 years since the Second World War. Some places more than other places. And I think even owning private property now in some places, what you call free, comes with a lot of what's the word? Well, it's not really yours if it's taxed inside
yeah.
out. Owning land, for example, even in the States, I say owning land in places in Britain. I don't own land here. One day maybe, but it comes with with all these taxes that you have to, not just buying it or selling it, but maintaining it, and all the duties, and they have to do with the land. They don't want you to. It's like
There's
it just can't.
it's a
Yeah,
scheme.
it's just, yeah. There's just, it can't just be yours, and this is where
Yeah.
Bitcoin fixes that. And I was like, how can that help then with other forms of ownership? And I think it can, because it brings up this, it shines a spotlight on how arbitrary ownership can actually be. And I think that courts, laws, the laws process is something that's been destroyed. I mean, I would say ever since the First World War. I think in the monarchical years, people would say, "Oh yeah, okay." I would say that in the monarchical years of Europe, you would have better court systems, cheaper. That's the most important thing: is cheaper court systems in those countries that had kings that understood that if they would want to hold on to their power for longer, they would make sure that their common man was able to defend themselves as well as the elite. And what we have now, so post First World War, that was what happened during the First World War, and afterwards is the destruction of monarchies and the introduction of democratic republicanism, is that law systems became much more complex. And when they become complex, they become more expensive. When they become more expensive, then the common man finds it hard to defend themselves. So then when you then introduce a system of short-termism, like of election cycles, to these complex law systems, you're going to have systems where invested interests of those who have the elite will be able to pump money into maintaining their power in those short election cycles, and they will dominate the law process. Whereas those who don't have, the common man, will find it very difficult to have a say and defend his land, property, rights, and all that. And this is what's been destroyed away. And I think part of this is is what you see with land, with ownership, with rights and all that, and that's why we live right now in a very divided world. But this is what one way of explaining is also the Cantillon effect as well. I think that's why we're making it very the Cantillon effect, I should say, the Cantillon is he was a French economist, 1840s or 50s, and he noticed that this an economic phenomena of that those who are closer to the money printer, that those elites who are closer to the wealth creation or money printing, favor better than those who are further away from it. Of course, that makes sense. But what happens is that those who are closer to the money printer get money when it's fresh at the lower interest rate and able to reinvest it. And they're told to obviously use it to reinvest in the economy. And Keynes would say, yeah, trickle down in economics. You should practice that, but that doesn't work. Instead, what they do is they actually buy real assets. So they'll buy property, gold, and now Bitcoin maybe. So when we goes down further down the food chain, when it gets to the common man, he can't borrow money at the same rate as those big elites. He has to borrow at credit card rates, which is like 20% or something, which is ridiculous. Not only is money more expensive to borrow then, but it is also inflation has actually taken a more of a hold since that money was first created from that when that elite actually was given that money. So basically, that actually leads to the inequalities that we have today. That's added, I'd say, what's the word? Multiplied, exacerbated by the destruction and not destruction, but the further complexity of our law systems has meant that the common man has really missed out over the last century and is suffering big time. But apparently we're all okay with all these distractions: Third World War, COVID, LGBT, all this bird flu, all that. So all of the above, basically, conflicts here and there. That's and we know. And what the real issue is that the real economy, and this is what happened during COVID, is that the real economy, and I think it can be very accentuated. What happened over the last 100 years can be accentuated. What happened in COVID is that power grab was that the mom and dad shops, the brick and mortar shops, were the ones who were told to shut down, whereas the big shops, the big companies, you're talking your Facebooks, your Amazons, your Facebook's not a good example because they will function no matter what. Your Amazons, your Walmarts and things like that, and we're all able to function properly, continue. But whereas your mom and dad shop, your brick and mortar, were told to go home, close their shops, given some stimulus, but that stimulus obviously was just a distraction. And that real economy, that brick and mortar economy, absolutely got leveled, got destroyed. So we had this K-shaped recovery, and this happens all the time: destruction of wealth, and then the elite wealth, the ones who are in control, the ones close to the money printer, the ones who actually have better rates, all that continued to grow higher, and we saw a huge expansion of wealth post-COVID, and it's only going to happen again. I don't know when, but it's going to happen again. And it's now I don't know what the next thing is. What is the next thing right now? World War III? I don't know.
Bird flu.
Bird flu. You said bird flu, yeah. I mean, but they tried bird flu in 2002 or 2009. They tried bird flu.
I have no idea, but they need something to blame. They need something to blame because financially, the numbers that are brewing into the fall here are like they're going to need something, right? To your point, they're going to need something.
This in America is that the labor markets there are absolutely nuts. I mean, what they're telling you is not what is actually really happening. You follow people like, I don't know if you follow people like Edward Dowd. Edward Dowd, he's not a Bitcoiner yet, but he should be. He has pointed out that there has been a increased number of disabilities ever since something was introduced in 2021. And so Biden comes into power 2020. Okay, he voted in late 2020. He said, he comes into power 17th or whatever, 19th of January 2021, and he inherits a COVID economy where everyone's been told to go home. and jobs are unemployment is at record highs, then obviously he opens the markets up, and he thinks he can take the credit for having all these jobs come back. But no, because he just inherited unemployment through lockdowns.
Yeah.
But then what's happened is that unemployment hasn't actually reached back to the peaks of pre-COVID to some margin. And not only that, the quality of employment is terrible. We have people on 1 or 2 or 3 jobs making absolutely nothing and not being able to make ends meet. Also with cost of living crisis, thanks to all the quantitative easing, money printing happening. But what I'm saying is that gap. Why is that gap? A lot of disabilities that have come about. And this was thanks to some things that were mandated in 2021, which is something that we should really look into and make some noise about.
Oh, yeah. Prince Philip, thank you so much for making time and coming on. And your response to the one question that I wanted to say this back when you said, I think what speaks volumes about you and what I've seen from interacting with you in person, and I just walk away from it every time, and I'm just saying he has so much humility for a person who just lives this really interesting life. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on, sharing your stories, and just being just very candid with the audience, and putting it all out there, and just your contributions to the Bitcoin community are just deeply appreciated by everybody who's ever interacted with you. And you're just like such an awesome person in this space. And I love calling you a friend. I also wanted to throw this out there. You and I had thrown around the idea of maybe doing something in Belgrade, in Serbia, at the end of August. I don't know if you're still inclined.
I think we should do something. Firstly, thank you so much for those kind words. Really, no, it means a lot to me. Just like to say that it being a Bitcoin in Serbia is not easy. We are. I think Serbia has a lot to offer Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has a lot to offer to Serbia.
Yeah.
We have a lot of technical minds here, a lot of quantitative minds here, which is great. But the current sentiment here is that it's very cash orientated. Cash is king. And when Bitcoin comes, when people are exposed to Bitcoin, they think, oh yeah, it's just some digital thing created by the KGB or the MI6 or the NSA and stuff. But obviously they haven't done their homework yet. So that that physical. You don't have that physical ownership, and that's what Serbs like, is that physical ownership. And I like that. That's good, but that's so they're one step away, a lot of Serbs, from understanding Bitcoin. So whenever I tweet or share anything about Bitcoin, there's a lot of loud voices, and you think Bitcoin Twitter can be harsh. Serbian Twitter, that's another level. So going to what you were saying afterwards is I think post Riga, we should do something. I think we should definitely do something here in Belgrade.
If people are interested and they're hearing this, after the Riga, there's a Riga event, like I think the 3rd week of August, and then maybe
the last weekend of August. So then afterwards, maybe on the 27th, 28th, 29th of August, we can do something here in Belgrade. We have a hub in Belgrade, a Bitcoin only hub that was opened up a 1.5 years ago. So thanks to John Barry, who works for Peak Shift, his company are paying for the rent of a space. It's like an apartment location on 2 levels here in the center of Belgrade, top location, and it's called Hub 21. It's a co-working space that's also open for meetups, for lectures, for presentations, for also anything Bitcoin related, really. And we can meet there. And also, I think we're going to maybe make a meeting happen in the palace as well.
Amazing.
At the moment, as you can see behind me, it doesn't look very palatial. I still live in a flat downtown, but hopefully I am moving into the palaces soon. That's another story that we can talk about. Maybe
maybe in Belgrade.
Maybe in Belgrade. But yes, so that's so let's make something happen here.
I love it. Okay. So if people are hearing that, you're in the area of Serbia, Belgrade, and you want to try to go to this, we're going to set something up end of August. Stay tuned.
Also, sorry, one more thing is maybe we're talking about having a 1-day conference, maybe in October 16th in Serbia. Yeah, in
Serbia
Belgrade
as well. Okay. Awesome.
So it's still very early stages, but
stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Prince Philip, thank you so much for your time. This was such a pleasure, and really enjoyed the chat.
Preston, the pleasure was mine too. Thank you very much.
When I was interviewing Elon for the Founders book, and we were talking about what is money, he said, money is just an information system, right? It's a way for us to avoid having to barter. That's almost an exact quote from something he said to me. And he says, because it's an information system, you can see how a universe of digital currencies is actually a much more efficient information system by Shannon terms than something like handing you, Preston, $1, right? Because it's just like there's a lot of friction involved there.